You're watching the JJ Podcast.
This week on the JJ Podcast, we're joined by Senator Jane Hume. She's smart, outspoken, and not afraid to take on tough debates. A leading voice in Australian politics and a powerhouse in the Liberal Party, she's one of the sharpest economic minds in Parliament. From tackling the cost of living to breaking barriers for women in politics, Jane brings honesty, intelligence, and a touch of humour to the table.
Well, Senator Jane Hume, thank you so much for joining us. This is so lovely. You're in Sydney and you've made the time to come and sit with us. So thank you.
It's good to be here with my two favourite Jaimies.
Yeah. Well, Jane, I just wanted to get into a few things that have been making headlines this week. I thought I can't have you in here without just talking about where the polls are at with the Liberals and just how much internally you all assess them, because, you know, it isn't great, but how much do you all look at that and think, okay, we have a problem here, or you don't look at that, you just wait for election time? How much do you read into it?
Well, I'll give you the standard answer that I would give in a television interview, which is, well, of course, we don't pay attention to the polls. We don't comment on the polls. The only poll that matters is election day. But these things, of course, are markers in some way or another. They're indicators, aren't they? Now, it's a small number of people. It's probably only 1,000 to 1,500 people. And it is very much a point in time. So they're responding to the news of the day. But if we don't pay attention to those markers and the trend of the polls, well, that's something that would be foolish, I think. So we do need to respond, but not to uphold, to broader polling.
What do you think it is that's making Sussan Ley not really resonate with voters at the moment? Is it more that she's not out there enough, that people aren't seeing who she is? I know she does press conferences and things like that, but maybe people don't know who she is. Or is it the people calling for policy? I know it's only been 5 months since the election. Do you think it's a mixture of those sort of things as to why the popularity vote is going in the wrong direction?
I think it's a combination of factors. I mean, one, of course, is that we've just had the most devastating election loss, and you were wrapped up in that, Jaimee. I mean, it was, it was heartbreaking to see so many of our colleagues leave the stage because there were some really bright minds and good hearts that we lost that were already sitting, and some extraordinary talent that we were really hoping to come through that didn't manage it. So I think that this is a natural response to a devastating election loss. People tend to gravitate towards the winner, if you like, and at the moment, that's our vote. Sussan is just beginning to reveal herself to population too. I mean, I know she's been in Parliament for a long time, but people really didn't know all that much about her. So she's now just beginning to demonstrate her competence, her personality, her priorities, allowing people to get to know her. That takes time.
Speaking of time, one of the things that came out this week, obviously, was the James Paterson speech. And you were seen saying that you had texted him to say you agreed with what he said with regard to Liberals need to end the apology tour and put a clear time limit on their soul searching. This is something that Jaimee and I have asked a lot of people, that we've met with Ted O'Brien, we've been at women's forums. And whilst we understand that obviously the platform has to be put together, it has to be thought out and planned and considered, it's also, you don't have forever. So What do you say about the fact that it's taking so long?
Well, first of all, I should say, Pato and I go back a long way. We're friends in the Victorian Division well before we both entered the Senate. We came in at about the same time in 2016. So, and obviously both being senators, we've known each other for a very long time. He's a very smart and canny operator. He's articulate. He's got a good, solid, old school Liberal compass. And, I'm a great admirer of his. I thought that speech was a really good stake in the ground for us. We do need to stop this, worldwide apology tour that we are doing, which is kind of crazy. It's really important to show contrition because people voted for us at the last election and expected better and didn't get it. So we should show contrition. But at some point in time, you say, enough's enough. Let's get on with the job. Because while we're going about talking about ourselves and doing the soul searching and the navel gazing, the Albanese government is just getting away with murder. And we shouldn't allow that to happen. Our job is to hold them to account. First and foremost, hold them to account for all of their failures, and there are a plethora of failures. They promised cheaper energy prices, they've failed to deliver them. Yeah. They promised cheaper housing, and they've failed to deliver that. They've promised cheaper healthcare, they've failed to deliver that. Hell's bells, they've promised to get emissions down, and they've failed to do that, even though they have spent billions of dollars on an ideological crusade in their energy policy space, and they haven't got emissions down. They're actually flatlined. They went down under the coalition, they're flatlined under Labor, which is extraordinary. So that's our first job. But the next job is to get that policy agenda to take forward to the next election. Make sure it's a combination of true to our values, certainly, but also electorally appealing. Now, it's not an easy thing to do. It's, sometimes it's quite a tough course to navigate. And it does have to also get through a much diminished party room as well. We want to make sure that it is consultative and that it's thoroughly worked through, which probably we didn't do as well as we should have in the last parliament. But there still is some work that can be done, even in advance of an election. You can say, well, look, this is what is important to us. Lower taxes are important to us. Safer communities are important to us. Lower energy prices are important to us. And then build the policies hanging on those really important principles.
You've got a really good bill that you've proposed, which I'll get to in a minute. But I just wanted to, you and I were at an event recently, and I was sitting there looking around the room at some of the most incredible women that are in the party, but also to what you just mentioned before, we also had some fantastic female candidates that were also in that room too. And after the election, it was, I must say, it was really paining me when people would say the Liberals have a female problem. And I would actually say to them, well, had any of those candidates been elected, the whole narrative would have changed because we literally had standout women, and they weren't there because they were women. They were there because they were just guns at their career and what they've done in their life. And it was Melissa McIntosh that actually, up on the stage, called out you and said, what a champion you are of women within the party. And I know firsthand, I experienced that myself when you came out to Warringah, I think 4 or 5 times. You'd be texting me, see how I'm going. And it was lovely because your media advisor, Elise, sent me a photo one day of you taking a photo of me on Credlin with the biggest smile on your face. And it's just this support. And I don't think we give the Liberals enough credit for people like yourself that are actually out there trying so hard to recruit women, make sure that they're doing well when they're there. It was just unfortunate that a lot of us were let down by the overall federal campaign. But how important is it for you just to continue being that mentor and that champion, that woman behind the other women, pushing them and encouraging them and ensuring that they can be as successful as they can in politics?
It's actually one of the parts of this job that I really enjoy. When you see a woman that you have helped along the journey, someone that perhaps you have tapped on the shoulder and said, you should think about running for politics, and see them first pre-select, then get elected, then start contributing in the party room. It is the most joyous thing. And that next generation of talent coming through, I'm going to be relying on that. You guys are my Liberal future too. So I will keep doing that very much. The one that in Victoria that I'm most proud of, I think, is Mary Aldred, who I've known for 20 years and has now entered as the member for Monash. She's already starting to make her positions felt in the party room. She's brave, she's sensible, she's just a great woman. And, more Mary Aldreds, more Jamie Rogers, more Ro Knox, more Giselle Capterians, more Katie Mullins. I mean, there were so many at the last election that was so good. I want to see more of them in Parliament. If we had a better election result, we probably would have been at almost a female parity.
Yes. I had a look during the last election because obviously I was campaigning with Jaimee and I was always trying to educate myself on these sorts of numbers. And I think I had a look, and with the Liberals and Nationals combined with 150 seats, I think I told you we were like 43% women in terms of the representation of the actual people running. But I heard recently, and I really wish I had noted down the statistics, but Jacinta Price delivered a speech at the Tim James? Tim James. And one of the things she said was, as much as she wants to champion women, and there are great women, as you said, the identity politics thing is dangerous because women still got beaten by men. And so this story of, falling down the identity politics and trying to meet the quotas, she said, she thinks can be quite dangerous. Do you agree with that? Or?
I've never been in favour of quotas, and I know that that's a debate that goes on, within our party, within society. Quotas they are really good for changing numbers. Don't get me wrong; they work, but they work in a top-down structure. When you've got a sort of an authoritarian structure, if someone at the top says this is what we're doing, and everybody else obeys, that's not how the Liberal Party works. We're a grassroots organisation. It builds from the bottom up. And if you start telling from the top down what the bottom up should do, that's when you get real friction. The trick is going to be demonstrating to those at the grassroots level the value, electoral value, as well as a political value that those women can bring to our parliament by having great candidates with brilliant professional backgrounds, with an electoral appeal, but also just, great people, great personalities. You're already doing that. So yes, Jacinta's made a really important point. We want to see changes, but we don't want to see them inflicted upon a grassroots organisation. We want it to see organic change. Yeah. Now, organic change would have happened at the last election had the electoral tide been moving in our way.
We can definitely tell that you are passionate about the female aspect, because a few candidates and we all chat, and your name came up in so many seats about how much you're out there supporting. I want to now talk about this bill that you have proposed. And the reason why I think it's really important that we talk about it is because the super gender gap is something that needs to be addressed. And it appears to be an issue that no matter how many times maybe people look to trying to fix it, it's not something that has been done. Now, you were the Minister for Superannuation. You've come from financial services background. So you are very experienced in this area. I'd love for you to tell our listeners what your bill was, because this sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, this is unfinished business for me too, from the time when I was Superannuation Minister. We made some extraordinary changes to super at that stage to make it fairer, to make sure that women got a better deal, that young people got a better deal in super, that fees came down, that superannuation funds were held to account. It was a very big agenda. And this one, unfortunately, sort of fell off the radar. So I'm excited by this. The gender super gap is intractable. Even though the gender pay gap, which is the biggest cause of the gender super gap, has come down from around 20% to around 11.5% now over the last decade, the gender super gap is still around 25%. So that means that women are retiring with a quarter less super than men on average. That's quite extraordinary. And it doesn't really seem to matter what is done about it. That number isn't moving. So this bill would allow couples to split their superannuation balances evenly between them and have an opportunity once a year to be able to reorganise their own personal affairs to reflect the decisions that they have made as a couple. Now, if you get divorced, this can happen automatically. There is a sort of a default position that says your super should be split evenly between the couple. Now, that can be traded away. One person gets the house, one person gets the super, whatever it might be. But why not have that while you're married too? Why not be able to say, well, I took 3 years off work to have and raise a couple of kids. That means that my super is much lower. Your super is higher. How about we split our superannuation evenly between us to reflect that unpaid work, caring responsibilities that we as a couple have decided that I will do. And it doesn't have to be just women. It could be, if there's a woman that's a higher income earner, maybe it goes to the bloke. It doesn't matter. But that's a decision that couples make. We plan for our retirements collectively, so why not have the flexibility within the superannuation system to do this?
I like that, because it was just recently highlighted. And the reason why, when I was reading into this, my husband and I were just doing a few things, and I saw our two super balances, and I said to Dave, oh my gosh, there's already such a huge difference, because I didn't take that long off when I had my children, but the difference already at this age was actually quite substantial. And I actually made a comment and said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize yours was that much bigger than mine. Wow. And this is, we're in our 40s. So you can imagine then if it continued on that trajectory until retirement, I would be hundreds of thousands of dollars behind him.
Exactly. And, I think that what you've done there is possibly the best outcome that this bill will deliver. It's not for everybody. It shouldn't be compulsory. You don't have to split your superannuation.
It's just an option. It's providing flexibility for families.
But it also causes couples to have that conversation, to look at their superannuation balances, and often people don't, to look at their superannuation balances and go, goodness, how did that happen? Why did that happen? And what should we do about it? Is there a benefit in doing something about it? Because there might not be at the age of 35. But by the time you hit 50, or if you've made changes at 35, and you're looking towards retirement, it is better to have a couple with similar balances. So
I'm just, while we're on that topic of husband-wife couples, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts in terms of family tax policy. Like, I know that this is not something that you're necessarily in charge of. I'd just like to know your feedback. We've discussed this with a few people recently. One thing I noticed on the One Nation website is that they've got a policy, a proposed policy, of course, that a husband and wife, as soon as they have a child, they can pool their income. So that if the woman was earning $60,000 or $70,000 a year and the husband was earning $130,000 a year, they can basically, or the woman is raising children and is not earning anything, they can bring a $120,000 salary to 60 each, and it saves them in tax.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Income splitting.
Yeah. So what do you think about that in terms of family tax policy that the Liberals could potentially, like, I think it could be an election winner, this type of thing?
Look, I think it's a really interesting proposal. One Nation obviously can put forward any policy proposal that they want to, knowing that they'll never have to actually follow through. And neither will they have to, clean up around the potential rorting around that. And, that would be something you'd have to put some guardrails on. But there is an argument right now, I think, particularly when our birth rate is so low. To
incentivize
what is
families.
it that we can do to encourage families to, and I don't want to say have more children, this is not a population policy, but to make it easier to fulfill their dreams that they might want to do. What worries me is that families are making decisions because of the cost of living crisis, because of the housing unaffordability, to have smaller families. They might want to have more children, but they're choosing not to. Now, I've got 3 kids. I'm so fortunate to have had 3 kids who are now in their early 20s and are all getting along just fine. But you don't see very many families these days saying, well, actually, I want to have 3 kids, 4 kids.
Brianna McKee gave those statistics, didn't she? You read them, that by the time people were 49 or something.
Yeah, they wished that they had more kids.
Yeah, like 50%.
But at the time, when you're going through it, because I know I would have loved to have 3 kids, but I'm married to someone that works in finance, so he's all about numbers. And he didn't see it as, the type of life that you might want to live to bring in that 3rd child. Wasn't something that he thought that we could do. But I just wanted to, just before we move on from your superannuation, I just wanted to just delve down just very quickly about the logistics in terms of, would this be done at tax time? Is there a cap of how much you could split across? Is the plan to do it at the same time as you're doing a tax return? Is that how this would work?
Well, the plan would be that you can do it any time in one financial year, but only once in a financial year. And there are some integrity measures around it. So, for instance, if, let's just say, and I hate using it in a very gendered way, but let's do it anyway. If the husband was the high income earner that had the big balance and the wife had no income and very little balance, you couldn't just dump it all into your wife's account and then start all over again. The maximum you could do would be to split it evenly. You couldn't put any more into your wife or spouse's account, partner's account, that would take her above that transfer balance cap where the tax starts getting more. This is not a tax avoidance measure. We want to make sure that's really clear. You could only do it if you've got one superannuation fund each. You can't do it if you've got multiple superannuation funds because it becomes too hard to track what everybody's balances are. So there are some integrity measures that you need to have there. But because of those integrity measures, it actually makes it a very bite-sized policy and very hard to argue with. The Prime Minister himself has come out and said that women shouldn't be punished for, the motherhood penalty, I think he called it. And a lot of Labor politicians have been speaking about this, that their solution is to put superannuation on paid parental leave. Now, paid parental leave is paid at minimum wage, and superannuation on that is pretty minor. We did some analysis back in 2020 that showed that actually that's really not going to scratch the surface of closing the gender super gap. That allowing people to split balances would, but it is optional. So it wouldn't close it completely, and it's not a policy for everybody, but it should be an option.
It's the option. It's providing choice.
Freedom.
Choice. What's the response been from the party?
Well, actually really good. Really good. I mean, no one could sort of pick a hole in it, which I think is really important. They realise that the government's response to this, that paid super and paid parental leave, is A, expensive. I mean, it costs $1 billion over 4 years, and B, inadequate because it only deals with women that are of childbearing age now, not the ones that are past that, or women that don't have children at all. But So it's kind of difficult to argue. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping to introduce it. Well, I've introduced the bill already, but I'm hoping that we get it debated in the Parliament, in the Senate chamber in the next few weeks, maybe.
Good luck with
and
it.
particularly while we're talking about superannuation more broadly, now that the government have done their big.
It's literally written here. I'm like, so Jim Chalmers backflip.
Yeah.
Whilst we're on the topic of superannuation.
How humiliating.
Yes.
I mean, what a slap down by the Prime Minister,
I know.
isn't it? And I love the fact that he did the slap down and then went on holidays.
Yes.
He just left Jim out there going, how's when am I going to announce this? I know. The guards and hostages are going to be released. Oh, I'll announce it now. Yeah. Quick, put it out there. Take out the trash. But of course, you can't get away with that because this was the government's only revenue measure, the only one that they took to the last election. And now that they've had to backflip, it's probably only going to rake in about half the revenue.
Yeah.
And that means that they've got this big budget black hole, this huge black hole.
So where are they going to pull from now?
The deficit's already at a record, predicted to be at a record high. So that's frightening.
That's right. And spending is now 27% of GDP. So what are they coming after next? Is it going to be tax on the family home? Is it going to be getting rid of the capital gains tax discount, which, to be honest, not very many people understand, but that is a red tape measure. It just stops indexation of capital gains. Are they going to get rid of negative gearing? Are they going to come after family trust? They will be coming after something.
Yeah.
Because they've got to fill the hole or the
and family trust opens up all sorts, gift tax, death tax, like there's
and so many small businesses, particularly sole traders, use family trusts as their business structure. So that's going to open a can of worms.
Do you think this was a missed opportunity from the Liberals during the last campaign? I know you were screaming from the rooftop about this because I was with you when you were actually explaining it to people of what that tax could possibly have meant to them and their family. But I don't know if I think it was a missed opportunity because I don't think Peter Dutton was out there enough talking about it. Because I would have a lot of people in our electorate that would say, this is a really big problem. But then I don't think it was coming down from other people within the party.
Look, should we have spoken about it more? Probably. But then, I'm a superannuation wonk. So I love talking about this stuff.
That's so true.
And so, yes, I think we should have spoken about it more. But the problem with super has always been the fact that not just it's complicated, but it's about something that happens in the future.
Yes.
There is,
this is sort of there.
That's right. This concept of financial myopia. You cannot imagine what it is you're going to look like, feel like, need in terms of income in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time. So you just don't think about it. You say, I'm sure that'll sort itself out eventually.
I'm worrying about the things of today.
So for that reason, when we said, but it's not indexed, young people will get caught up in it. Everyone just sort of went, I'm sure it won't affect me, or I'm not all that concerned about that now. That'll affect me in 30 years' time. So, and look, to be honest, that is a good, responsible, Liberal government or opposition's responsibility, is to point out what it is that we want for the future generations. Should we have articulated it better? Yeah, probably.
Right on where you say, should you have articulated it better? That's one thing I wanted to ask, because at the Women's Forum on Monday, all these lovely, smart Liberal women went around the table and explained to Melissa McIntosh and Anne Ruston some women's concerns and health concerns and things that they would love to see the Liberal Party talking about. And when it got to me, I was like, I'm not even going to give you a women's issue or a health issue, because unless you can get your messaging and your communications right, all of it's a complete waste of time. And so when you mentioned just articulating it, it's exactly that. I think my biggest frustration is not that I doubt that the Libs have got answers. I know the Libs have answers, but it's the messaging. It's how you actually explain to a young person, hey, you need to be switched on. And it was the reason Jaimee and I decided to go and try and create an online channel and a podcast and have these conversations, because we were so disappointed that our demographic, the average 40-year-old mum out there at the school gate is voting left and teal. And
or they'd look at us and go, ooh, yuck, Liberals.
Yeah. And I'm like, do you know how this is impacting your family, your community, your state, your nation, and the future for our children? Australia will look very different in 15 or 20 years if we don't wake up.
Well, I love the fact that you guys are doing this. It's kind of making Liberal cool again. So it's brilliant.
I don't know. We are the Audi version of Sky News, apparently.
That's been the feedback. We had a good chuckle at that.
Oh my heavens, that's so funny.
Yeah, we did have a good chuckle about that.
Yeah.
So-
For all you haters out there, we love it.
Yeah, we do have a good laugh at those sort of comments. So then will the Liberals support the backflip of Jim Chalmers' changes to the superannuation?
Well, this is interesting because, let's face it, this is a brand new tax. And if we are the party of lower taxes, we should oppose taxes. We opposed this legislation, the old legislation at the last election, but we didn't just oppose it, we said that we would repeal it. Now, speaking as a former finance minister, that was fraught because that meant we had to find the money to make up the difference, because it was a big revenue raiser, so that we could even just start on an even playing field going into the election. Now, we did it, but it came at a cost. We had to do policies like saying that we were going to wind back the public service, admittedly by natural attrition, but it was, it was still a policy that sent people wild, which I just found extraordinary for Liberals to sort of worry about that, because the public service had grown by 20%. So, and so finding the money is a really difficult thing to do. The question now is, should we oppose it? Yes, I think we absolutely should oppose it. Should we repeal it? That's a kind of a tough one. To be honest, if they pass this legislation, they will be able to do it with the Greens. If they pass this legislation quickly, I would imagine the conversation will have moved on by the time we get to the next election. Those that will be most affected will probably have rearranged their affairs in anticipation. And I think that we have so much in the way of a wish list policy agenda that's building up behind the scenes. If we hamstring ourselves by saying that we're going to have to find billions of dollars in savings by cutting government programs or whatever it might be, it is going to limit what it is that we can present as an alternative government to the next election. So, look, I'm in two minds. My gut says, repeal it. It's terrible. New tax. But the pragmatist in me says that I would forgive them if they choose not to.
One thing that has been a contentious topic, I believe, is this whole net zero.
Yeah.
And I know you have been out speaking about it, and I've been asked about it a few times as well. And I'm torn in terms of, I'm a Liberal and I want us to win the next election. I'm obviously in an electorate that cares deeply about the environment. And so this whole net zero discussion, I feel if the Liberals come out and say we're scrapping net zero, we will be called climate deniers by the Teals, Greens and Labor for the next 3 years. And that, I think, people take quite hard if you're a climate denier. But then at the same time, with that getting to net zero, is it about coming out and saying, look, we want to reduce emissions. That is what everyone wants to do. But we need to do it in a way that we're not destroying our country in the process. What's your take on this?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think that Liberals should own their environmental credentials. We're the party that created Kakadu National Park. We're the party that created the Great Barrier Reef Marine Reserve. And, we are good with environment. And it's a very conservative principle to leave the economy and the country in a better place than you found it. So I think we should really own that principle. On the issue of net zero, it means different things to different people. You're right, Jaimie, in that when people hear, I'm not entirely sure about net zero, what they hear is you don't believe in climate change. Now, there's an entire generation that have grown up now knowing, being educated that the climate is changing. And let's face it, the climate is changing. It always has. The real issue, of course, is how much of it is man-made and how much can man do to reduce that change and to make a difference. I do feel that we have a responsibility to do something about it. And I think that each election that we've had over the past decade has said that mainstream Australia acknowledge that climate is changing and want the Commonwealth to acknowledge it and take some responsibility to do something about it. What they do about it is the real issue. So I do think that we should work towards a net zero emissions future, but not following the path of Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen, which is just economic vandalism and environmental vandalism too. There are other ways. There are other pathways to get there. Let's face it, 2050 is 25 years ago away. 25 years ago, I was using a phone that had Tetris on it.
Yes,
the technology will get us there. There are some amazing technologies out there in the clean energy space right now, amazing. And we should be harnessing that. But we should also not be using taxpayer money to continue to subsidise proven technologies. Let's find a better way to get there. I personally think that nuclear is the way to go, not government-funded nuclear generators, but allowing the private sector to decide. And around the world, those 20 big economies,
they're all
adopting nuclear. They're all adopting nuclear. We should too, as the country that has a third of the world's uranium. And so we should be doing so much more in this space. That's one of the reasons why I've been so vocal about our bid for COP. Now, there's a few people that go out there and say, "Oh, COP, it's just a big talk fest. All the leaders of these countries come and set climate targets and impose them upon other countries, and they all fly here in their jets with their jet fuel, destroying the environment." No. That is a small component of COP. The large component of COP is just a big trade fair where all of the clean energy companies, all of the world's financiers, and let's face it, global finance has moved in this direction already. They want the certainty. We should provide that certainty. But they all congregate in the one space and they get to show their wares. How hard would it be for Anthony Albanese to walk past a stall where GE is demonstrating how it can reduce emissions with its nuclear technology and also reduce the cost of energy at the same time? So, no, we're not interested in that because we're going to pursue more wind towers or more solar panels or whatever it might be at enormous taxpayer risk.
This is what I don't understand about the argument with some on the left that is saying we shouldn't be mining or exporting uranium. If you really cared about the world getting its emissions down, we'd be giving uranium to every country that already has nuclear power because it's emissions-free energy.
Exactly.
So
extraordinary.
I don't understand that argument at all.
But it's not even on the critical minerals list, which I find amazing. Just amazing that they're so stubborn that they won't put it on the critical minerals list. And this is at the same time as we're now seeing America in particular pull back from some of its supply chains, particularly those around Russia. I mean, that's Kazakhstan, which has the second largest deposits of uranium. If they want to withdraw from Kazakhstan's uranium, they're going to want Australian. We should be, pumping this stuff out because it's a fantastic revenue raiser for us. It's a truly good resource that does good in the world.
This could be where Jim Chalmers fills that black hole, but also with the fact that we're having nuclear subs.
Yeah,
I think we also just need to
hypocrisy after hypocrisy.
We're going to be putting our, the Navy divers until all within these nuclear subs in these small confined spaces, and yet we're not willing to even just lift the moratorium here. Because surely we're going to need to be able to have some sort of capacity to facilitate those subs.
That is the first step. The first step is lifting the moratorium, something I'm very passionate about. Watch this space. Yes, we should be lifting the moratorium. We should be establishing a growing civil nuclear capability, which we already have. We've got ANSTO, so we've got the regulations. We've already had it sitting on Sydney's doorstep.
Lucas Heights.
And we should be developing that civil capability so that we can eventually use it for nuclear power, which, to be honest, I think is an inevitability.
But we're just putting ourselves so far behind the rest of the world. That's the frustration. We'll go, oops. It's never too late, I don't think, but it could have been a game changer for us a long time ago when we've sat arguing and navel gazing and going back and forth, left and right, bouncing around.
Fascinating that we're now at 50 years since the dismissal of the Whitlam government. And ironically, Rex Connor was possibly the most corrupt resources minister that ever walked the face of the earth. But, with the whole Khemlani affair and everything else. But they were looking at a nuclear industry back then. Back then, they were looking at places for a nuclear waste facility. Back then, that was Labor in the 1970s when they were at their most progressive. Where are they? Where are they? This is now just ideological belligerence and economic vandalism to not go down this path.
Yeah. Last question from me is just, what's next for the Liberal Party?
Wow, how long is the piece of string?
That's probably what we should have started with. But
that could have been a whole half an hour conversation.
We'll shorten it. What's probably the most pressing thing in your mind? What is the most urgent thing that needs to be addressed? Is it Sussan Ley's leadership? Is it what's going on with some of the infighting and the leaks, or is it policy development, or is it just holding the Labor government to account?
So I think you should expect that everyone gets a little pointy elbowed after an election. We should be talking about policy. We should have very robust debates inside the party room. The fact that they leave the party room is frustrating, but kind of inevitable because there's some big stakes in the ground that we are planting right now. The policy development must happen. But as I said, it's really about putting those principles out there, articulating what they are and then letting the policies hang from those principles. In the meantime, though, we have to fight Labor. They are getting away with murder on our watch, whether it be the failures in net zero, whether it be energy prices going up, emissions going up, house prices going up. The cost of going to the doctor is still $50 out of pocket.
Where's your Medicare
card? Exactly. But it's $50 on average out of pocket. The CFMEU is still running wild on our construction sites. These are failures of this government, and we need to hold them to account every single day, remind people every single day. We can do two things at once. We can develop the policy agenda and we can hold Labor to account so that by the time we get to that next election, people are looking for a genuine alternative and they see their hopes, their dreams, their values reflected in what it is that we offer.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. We really, really appreciate it. We love having you in the Liberal Party, so keep it up.
Oh, thank you very much for having me too. I'm a total fangirl for you too.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the JJ podcast.